You have to have the courage to take action in spite of fear, because the magic happens on the other side of that uncertainty.
Hey, what's up, friends? Grant Baldwin here. Welcome back to the Speak Aloud podcast. Excited for today's conversation. You are in for a treat, my friends. Today we're going to be chatting with Clinton Young, who has been a very successful speaker and then also works a ton with our students inside the Speak Lab. And so he's been part of the team for a couple years now. So excited to chat with him. Clinton, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today?
Thank you, Grant. I'm doing outstanding. Great to be here.
Yeah, let's get into it. So first of all, one of the things I always like to start with, we're going to be talking a lot about, you are in the trenches, in the weeds with speakers on a day in, day out basis, helping them build and grow their speaking business. And so we're going to talk about that, things that you've noticed, things that you've learned, things that we can share with the audience today about how they can continue to build and grow their speaking business, regardless of where they're at on the journey. But for some context here, I always like to start with tell us about your own speaking journey, because you've been very successful as a speaker. You've done a lot of paid gigs. And so maybe give us some context of how you got into speaking in the first place.
Oh, Grant, you're going to love this. So it actually starts with one of your podcasts, and I'm not placating here. It starts with literally episode 25. I'm going to get to that in 1 minute though, but just picture this. All right. It's 2008. Okay. We all know what happened in 2008 globally, right? There's this financial collapse, and I literally had a really, really challenging time during that time. I lost my business. Within the span of 6 months, I lost my business, I lost my property, I lost my credit score. Wow. Six months after getting engaged. Welcome to the team, honey, right? Welcome to the team. But no kidding. 16 years later, still married. So picture this. I'm at a seminar, and I am not leading this seminar at all. I am at the microphone. I am shattered. My confidence is absolutely shattered. And in front of 200 people, the seminar leader looks right at me and he says, "Clinton, you're dead inside." And I was just like, ugh, it was like a stake to my heart, Grant. But in that moment, I realized that I needed to reignite my human spirit. You know that pilot light under a gas stove that's always going? It's
fireplace.
Always on? Yep. My pilot light was flickering at best. And I knew that I had to reignite my human spirit. So I went on this sort of spiritual journey unknowingly. It's just kind of happened over the next 7 years. And it wasn't soon after that moment in the seminar that I was out taking a walk in nature, as I often do, contemplating, trying to get clarity, trying to get some feet under myself again. And it hit me like a Harry Potter thunderbolt right between my eyes, Grant. And it was that my purpose was revealed to me, and that is to reignite the human spirit, right? But I knew I had to reignite my human spirit in order to do that for others. So, fast forward a few years, I was actually listening to your podcast, episode 25 with Arel Moody. Hopefully I got the number right. One of your buddies, Arel.
That's my boy.
And it sparked something in me, Grant, that it sparked a confidence in me, that I knew that I could do this. I'd been speaking for years, like many of your listeners, in jobs, in businesses, on stages for sales presentations and training. So I was pretty comfortable in front of the room, but I had no clue what to do, how to actually get booked and paid to speak. So I listened to that podcast, and hopefully you're okay with me sharing this whole story, but I ended up speaking at the School for Entrepreneurship here in San Diego. And it was I literally wrote down a timeline here in case you asked me this. It was 2016 that I listened to your podcast. Cool. Right when y'all were getting started. And in 2017, December, I spoke at the School for Entrepreneurship, and I got my first paid gig ever, $500.
$500. Come on, now let's go.
Yeah, we'll take it. And from that moment, I did my $500 gig. And I was at a point of decision. And I was like, I could go and kind of figure this out on my own and just keep slogging it out and, speak for free a bunch of times. I was working a 60-hour-a-week job and speaking 3 to 5 hours a week on the side for free mostly. Or I could find a system, find a tool, find a resource. So I ended up hiring my first coach February 2018. Soon after that, I got my first my next paid gig of $2,500. So I was stepping it up.
That's cool.
And by May of 2019, after hiring a coach and kind of working on the business side of speaking, in just 17 months, part-time speaking, I got my first $10,000 gig.
That's cool.
And since then, I've become an international speaker, and I've had the good fortune to speak all around the world, mostly in the UK and all across the United States. And I never would have thought it possible, but I was actually named a while back by Arianna Huffington's Thrive Global as a top 12 speaker to inspire you. So for what it's worth, they think I'm pretty good. And it's just so cool that now I've come full circle. And now I get to hang out with people like you and help forward the Speaker Lab's mission to give speakers clarity, confidence, and a clear path to make an impact as a booked and paid speaker. So it's very humbling, and I'm just in such gratitude to be here on this podcast with you, Grant.
That's awesome, man. Very cool. Thanks for sharing all that. And so it's actually funny you mentioned the podcast episode with Arel. Arel texted me a couple days ago. I think this was in some Facebook group, but there was a screenshot he sent me of a comment from a lady who said, "Hey, I got into speaking after listening to the original episode that he and I did together, that same one that you're referring to, which was like 9-10 years ago, which is wild." So that episode, we were like, "Man, we're old. We've been doing this podcast thing for a minute." But so you mentioned like you've done a tremendous amount of speaking and now work on the side with the Speaker Lab in terms of helping speakers who are where you were, 10 plus years ago, of going like, I think I can do this. But one of the things that we see that speakers struggle with is they struggle, like you mentioned, with that clarity, that confidence, that clear path. Like, I'd be curious from your perspective, what are some of the limiting beliefs, the challenges that you see a lot of the speakers that you're working with, that we see here at the Speaker Lab, that what are they coming to us with that they feel like they're lacking or struggling with?
Such a good question, Grant. I mean, there's such an imposter syndrome out there. Like, I was literally talking to my wife this morning. I got nervous to come on this podcast with you, Grant, and I've been on thousands of stages. Literally, I was nervous. And she's like, "Honey, you need to relax. You've been on thousands of stages. You know what you're doing. You have mastery around this."
Yeah.
And it's so funny that how we all have this imposter syndrome. So, as you know, we get a ton of professionals who come to us. I was talking to a CEO the other day of, I think it was the United Way, some big nonprofit that's looking to work with us at the Speaker Lab. We talked to a lot of coaches, a lot of consultants, a lot of authors who have a ton of experience, but they have this imposter syndrome. Like, they don't think that what they have to say is worth getting paid to say it. Yeah. And that is by far, in my opinion, the biggest thing that really stops people is ourselves. It's our own limiting beliefs around, can we get paid? And a lot of people, you might be listening to this podcast saying, I look up on stage and I say to myself, I could totally do that. Right? Has that ever happened to you out there listening? Like if you're saying that right now, you probably should be a professional speaker. If you have your family members or your people in your job or your business saying, you're pretty awesome on stage. Have you ever thought about doing this? These are all telltale signs that happen to all of us who become professional speakers. We just need to take that next step. Some of you who are not viewing this and just listening, you can't see, but on my microphone, it says the word courage, right? That's what I speak about. You have to have the courage to take action in spite of fear, because the magic happens on the other side of that uncertainty.
And you're exactly right that this is something like imposter syndrome affects everybody. And so anybody you look up to, you admire, you respect, they still have those same doubts and insecurities. I've always been blown away by that as in my own speaking career and my own entrepreneurial career, that they're people that I've had a chance to meet that I feel like are way ahead of me, that I've always looked up to it in my respect. And the more I get to know them, the more I'm like, oh, you don't have any idea what you're doing either. And you deal with these same doubts and insecurities. And I'm no different, even I've shared this with our team. I think I've shared this a time or two on the podcast, but Clinton, that recently I started taking drum lessons, learning to play the drums. I don't have any reason to do this. There's I'm not having some midlife crisis or trying to join a band or anything. I don't have any musical ability. I've just always thought it'd be cool to be able to play the drums. And it seems like in your mind, like, oh, I could do this, you watch some videos or you air drum in the car and you're like, I could totally do this. And then you sit down and you're like, dang, this is hard. You sit down with an instructor or a coach or whatever, or you watch videos, or you sit down the set and you're trying to hit things and you're like, this is difficult. And again, like the immediate rush in your mind of like, who are you? You're like, what are you doing? Trying to thinking that you can play drums, and why are you doing this? This is a waste of time. And like, that is just so common in everybody and
Yeah.
anything that you are, that you're trying to set out to. So I guess one of the next questions then is like, how do you overcome this? Is this something that's overcomable, or is it something where like you just kind of come to grips with this is always going to be there in the back of your mind?
Yeah, it is always going to be there. I always tell a lot of speakers, I obviously work with a lot of aspiring speakers that have never been paid before at the Speaker Lab. And then I've also worked with a lot of people who have been paid, but they haven't been able to do it on a regular basis. And what I always tell all of them is, it's not going away. You have to learn how to manage it and manage our mind. And I always say, the more awareness you have, when you have an awareness that something's going to happen, it doesn't really have a grip on you. You're like, oh yeah, that's that thing Grant was telling me about, or Clinton was telling me about, right? So one of the things I'll say, just kind of as a tip, as you're going on stage, I'll share that, just kind of a fun thing that I normally do. It's funny, I get this weird pain in my right finger. I don't know what it is. I had it this morning, and that's how I knew I was nervous. I was like, dang it, there's that feeling. It happens every single time I get on stage. And I literally, when I'm on stage, I'll say to myself, Clinton, you're about to do something of significance. Right? You're about to do something of significance. And what that does for me personally is that shifts the focus from me and the concerns that I have. Is my fly up? Am I going to say the right thing?
Right.
Do I have anything to say, that's of value? Am I going to say it the right way? Right? And it shifts my focus over to that of the audience and that collective, what I like to call collective pain in the room.
Yeah.
And it allows me to focus on really getting clear that my job here, I have a responsibility here to impact the audience, to give them what they need and speak to that collective pain in the room. It just shifts my focus over to that of the person sitting in the audience. And that is when you truly can speak authentically.
Now, one of the things that we work with speakers on that you've seen a lot is when speakers come to us, they say, hey, I know that I want to speak. I know that I'm passionate about speaking. But we really talk a lot about the Speak framework and helping people get clear on who you speak to, what problem that you are solving. And this is one of the bigger challenges for speakers because we just enjoy speaking. And so the default is, who do I speak to? I want to speak to people. I want to speak to humans. My message is for everybody, right? And what do I speak about? I don't know. What do you want me to speak about? We could talk about, business or speaking or entrepreneurship or family or faith or leadership or customer service or whatever, and on the list goes, because again, I just want to spread the net as far and wide as possible because I just want to speak. And so from your perspective, like, what have you seen that's worked well to help a speaker try to narrow down and to find some of that clarity of, rather than trying to be all things to all people, no, like, this is my topic, this is my audience, this is who I speak to and the problem that I solve for them?
Love it. Yeah, this is a question that we get a lot from our students and prospective students. It's like, how do I figure it out? And that's the first way that we know, by the way, you've never been booked and paid, or that you aren't getting booked and paid at the rate that you deserve or at the consistency you like, is if you're saying things like Grant just mentioned, oh, I can speak to anyone, or I don't want to, the biggest one is, I don't want to miss out on opportunities.
Yeah.
I don't want to exclude anyone. We don't understand that there's something to that cliche, get rich in the niche, right? Yeah. It's like the riches are in the niches. You really, if you're not focused on something in particular, you're going to just fade into the white noise, right? Yeah. So one of the things I like to say, Grant, is I like to say, you want to think of a stool. If everyone just pictures and imagines a stool right now, and there's 3 legs on it. And the first leg is credibility, right? You want to look at all the areas of your life where you have credibility, right? That's going to be your work experience, your life experience, your academic experience, your successes, and your failures, by the way. That gives you credibility, right? So we look at credibility, then we want to look at excitability. What is it that when you talk about it, you could talk about it all day long? You're just fired up about it. You've got content for days. You don't need to prepare. It's just in your mind. Or who's an audience that when you speak to that audience, you're lit up and you're inspired. So credibility plus excitability plus profitability. We need to look at, where are the opportunities, what industries, what topics are of the most value or the biggest biggest budgets are, like leadership, motivation, mental health is a huge one, wellness, well-being, technology, artificial intelligence. There's so many topics, right? The bottom line is, whether I've said your topic or not, just in a moment, that moment ago, you're likely sitting on a six-figure paid speaking business and you don't even know it. You just have to figure out how to choose one, and using those three legs to that stool is a great place to start. You don't dive into anyone. It's not just, oh, this is the most profitable, so I'm going to go that way. No, you got to have credibility in that space as well. And it's got to excite you as well, or you're just not going to take the actions required.
Now, when you mentioned something like credibility, I think this is another challenge that speakers have is going like, okay, I may be credible on something, but I know plenty of people who are way ahead of me. So, for example, I don't know this. Do you play drums at all? Do you know anything about drums?
I do. I have a bunch of hand drums.
Oh, okay.
When we come to San Diego, we'll have to have a little Matthew McConaughey drum circle.
A drum off there. All right. So, all right, that ruins my illustration then. But there's plenty of people who are listening who don't know squat about drums, right? So for me, I'm looking at it going like, okay, I know very little about drums, but I probably know more than 95% of the world's population, right? Just because I've done a few lessons and dinged around with it, right? And so in my mind, I'm just like, well, I'm not an expert. I don't know squat about drums, but I know more than most people. And so like, how do you determine like how much credibility does someone need to get booked and paid to speak? Because again, it's like, just because I know something about drums doesn't necessarily mean that I should be considered an expert on that. So I don't know. How do you think about that?
This is a very common question as well. I mean, a lot of people think they need to have a certification as a coach, or they need to go, become a doctor or some other crazy, not that that's bad. Those are great things. I have my master's degree in organizational psychology, but ultimately you don't need any of those things. Okay. You need to know more than the people that you're talking to. And even hold on, I actually going to backtrack what I just said, because sometimes you're talking to an audience who does know more than you, or I've spoken to audiences where there are a bunch of doctors. I don't have my doctorate, right? Yeah. So there are ways to approach that, perhaps in a different podcast, of how to approach that so that you get the people in the audience that are saying, well, what is this guy going to teach me, right?
Yeah.
There's a way to do that. But ultimately, you don't need to have any certification. You need to have some level of experience where you can speak authentically and congruent. It's got to be congruent with how you feel about your knowledge. As long as you feel like you have content to share, or if somebody comes to you and asks for advice in a certain topic, and that happens a lot, you probably know more than most people. Like my wife was telling me this morning, she's like, Clinton, you know more than 99.9% of the population on speaking and selling and the different things that I've done, but we don't often think that. We do not need a certification. We do not.
That's good. All right, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about like, okay, if I decide like, okay, I know that I want to get booked and paid to speak. I've never done this before, but as we both know, it's so much more than just kind of going like, okay, I'm just going to put this out into the universe, or I'm going to close my eyes really, really tight and click my heels together, and then magically like gigs are going to start falling in my lap. Like it just doesn't work like that. So how do you start to put yourself out there, put your name out there? How do you stand out? Or maybe what some of those first steps are when you've decided like, okay, I know that I want to do this, but it's kind of like, now what? Like where do I even begin?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the speak framework if you want. We really need to have a framework that we're going to follow. And the first part of the speak framework that we talk about here at the Speaker Lab is, we've kind of touched on this, it's selecting the number one problem that you solve and selecting the audience that you solve it for. Who's that perfect audience that you can solve that problem for? So without that, like, we're kind of just flailing and shooting in the dark. Yeah. We have to have some level of clarity around where we're going to start. And it's kind of like when you're driving a car, if you're trying to turn the steering wheel, but the car's not moving, it's almost impossible to turn that steering wheel. But as soon as the tires start to turn, we can turn that steering wheel like a warm knife through butter, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to get enough clarity to start. And that starts with selecting the number one problem that you solve and the number one audience that you solve it for. And then we need to find a way to research and look for and find opportunities, right? So a lot of people try to go out and manufacture speaking opportunities. That's not what you need to do. You need to go find where are the places that are already putting on events. They're already looking for paid speakers. So what can we do? Well, we can look at other speakers in our niche. So if I'm a leadership speaker, for example, we can just go on Google and start to look for what are speakers, like look for leadership speakers. Literally, you could just type that in, right? There's so many things you can do by looking at the topic, the problem that you solve, keywords around your speakers, and look for events. You can also look at associations, National Speakers Association. You can look at there's thousands and thousands of associations around the world. You can look at Speakers Bureau. Find speakers in your niche and look at their website. There's clues on there. Look at the testimonials of the people that have seen them speak. Where did they speak? Look at their videos, right? Their demo videos, because there are clues in there if that speaker spoke there, you might be able to speak there as well. Now, obviously, if they're a $10,000 speaker and you're just getting started, you're not going to speak at a 1,000-person national sales conference, right? Sure. Look at some of their earlier speaking gigs, or look at speakers that are maybe just getting started that are 5 or 10 or 15 steps ahead of you instead of 5,000 steps ahead of you.
Let's say you start to identify some of these. It's going like, okay, I found some, and I think a couple questions come to mind. Like, okay, what do I do from there? But also, like you kind of alluded to, even with this, like, this hypothetical national sales conference of going, I found one. How do I know if I'm even a good fit for it, or if I'm qualified to speak at it? And then let's say that hypothetically I am. Like, what do I do from there? How do I even begin to get on their radar?
Good question. The one thing you do not do is send them a 10-page email with your website and if you have a demo video or have a website and all this stuff. They don't want that. You got to understand, most people out there who are hiring speakers, unless they're a professional event planner, most people that are making the decisions are like on a committee, and they usually they drew the shortest straw, yeah. Right? They don't know what they're doing. They're not a professional speaker. They're not a professional talent buyer. So your job as a speaker is to make their job easy. Find a way to make their job easy. And the way you do that is through specificity. Like you often say, I've heard on other podcasts, where if you're trying to find a steak, are you better equipped to find a steak or a better likely chance to find a steak at a buffet or a steakhouse, right? You want to go to the steakhouse. So you want to become that steakhouse in your industry. And ultimately, in the beginning, you just have to try to make it easy and clear that you solve one specific problem. Because if I'm somebody who is an event planner, or maybe not an event planner, somebody who's on the committee that's not a professional talent buyer, and I'm looking for a speaker, and I go to somebody's LinkedIn profile, or I look at an email, or I have a conversation with somebody and they say, oh yeah, I speak about this, that, this, I could do this, that. I don't mean you shouldn't be flexible inside of your target, but I mean when you're marketing, you're going to market to that bullseye. You're going to speak to that bullseye. If somebody asks you that's maybe in the outer ring of your bullseye and you still have authenticity around that and you feel like you could really add value, then you can accept those gigs, but you don't market to those outer rings of the bullseye. You market to the center of the bullseye.
And so from there, like, is there something that speakers can do to even stand out? Because like you mentioned, if you're reaching out to, let's say, a decision maker who is most likely part of a committee or a board, or it's not just like they're the only, decision maker within that, it's kind of a group of people oftentimes. They're typically going to be looking at a variety of different speakers. And so it's not just you in isolation. They're looking at you and several others. So is there anything that we can do to stand out from the crowd?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's aligned with this specificity, and you wanna be able to get a conversation, first of all, right? So I said what not to do earlier around sending them a 9-page email. What you do want to do is send a simple email like, hey, James, noticed you have this awesome event, and if you know something about it, throw in something that shows that you've done some research. I'm just curious, who does your hiring, or who hires your speakers? Who's responsible for hiring your speakers? Yeah. Simple, like 2 sentences. Don't even say anything about yourself necessarily. You're just trying to find out who is the person that hires speakers. You want to get a phone call scheduled, ultimately. That's my opinion. You want to get them on the phone. And eventually, you're going to go through the process of, asking questions, et cetera. But you need to have a tool. You need to have a tool the use of which is going to make it super clear what problem you solve. And we talk about this at the Speaker Lab as the number one tool that every speaker needs to land paid speaking gigs. And that tool, as you know, Grant, is your speaker abstract. Your speaker abstract. Now, this isn't like your typical one sheet. That's kind of a little bit of a thing of the past where you've got the multi-page one sheet with all this, fancy stuff. It's got to be super simple, super simple. And it ultimately, there's 7 elements to it, but ultimately it's going to outline very clearly what problem you solve and what audience you solve it for, because the decision maker does not necessarily care about your background and all those things. Yes, they want to know about you and they're going to look at that eventually. But the number one thing that's most important to them, Grant, is can you solve my audience's problem? Mm-hmm. Can you solve my audience's problem?
So from there, once we have this abstract, we send it to them. Like you mentioned, one of the primary goals is to get on the phone with them, start conversations with them. And so I think like one challenge for speakers is to have kind of a long-term, bigger perspective on this. Like sometimes we just think like, I send a couple of 2-3 emails out, or, I've got a connection, from my current job or a past job or someone that I know who's a friend of a friend looking for a speaker that I might be a fit for. And sometimes we just think it's kind of like, send a couple of emails, reach out to a couple of people, and then it just all magically works out. And part of it is just having a long-term perspective. So what would you say to speakers of going from, how do you do more than just trying to book a gig to ultimately like building a speaking business and making a bigger impact? What advice would you give?
I would say you need a system, right? One of my mentors said this one day, and I added the last letter here, systems, right? Systems are powerful. They're the number one thing that separates out your hobbyist from your professional paid speaker, or any industry for that matter. Systems provide leverage, right? How do I go from trading time for dollars, one bit of input, one bit of output, to go to 1 bit of input to 3 bits of output, right? That's leverage. How do we do more with less? Well, it's through systems, right? And the acronym is save yourself time, energy, money, and I like to say sanity, because sanity is the most important one. So we've got to have systems. We've got to have the attitude that you're not just trying to get booked one time. If you really want to make an impact as a speaker, you've got to have systems, and you've got to be persistent, and you have to take action. Consistently take action. I mean, shoot, we have students that work with us that are now making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're still prospecting every single day or 5 days a week, right? Yeah. So you have to always be prospecting. You always have to be out there looking for opportunities, or you're not going to be a paid speaker for very long.
Yeah, I think the systems part is so important, because there's certainly speakers that we talk with, that we work with, who say, maybe I've spoken at a couple things, maybe I've been paid a time or two, maybe it was just like something that was kind of word of mouth, or it fell in my lap. And having a mentality or an approach of, I'm just going to sit back and I wait for things to come to me, it's just a very reactive way of approaching business. And just ultimately, like, that just doesn't work. Versus, contrast that with going, no, like, I'm going to be much more proactive and saying, no, I want to build a business, but rather than just kind of the shotgun approach into the ether, going, no, I have a system in place that I follow. I know how to predictably get gigs, and I know what to do from here to build a business, build something that's much more repeatable and sustainable in terms of making an impact, making an income from speaking. So we've talked about a lot here, and there's certainly more that we could cover. You're actually going to be hosting or helping host a training. Maybe talk us a little bit through of what that is and how speakers can learn more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people have been probably listening to this podcast for a while, and some people are brand new listeners. But a lot of people that we talk to on a regular basis, Grant, they've wanted to get booked and paid to speak for years. I talk to people that are like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Some are a year, 5 years, right? But a lot of years. And ultimately, they just keep showing up, keep listening, but they're not actually taking action, right? So some of that is they think there's this massive amount of commitment. They need to quit their job and become a full-time speaker. And it's like, no, you don't need to do that. You need to start off like riding 2 horses, right? And sometimes it can be a little bit bumpy. So you got to be in for the ride so that eventually you can jump off that first horse and get on that second horse. Yeah. And ultimately, we have an opportunity. It's called the virtual boot camp. Booked and paid boot camp, I should say. we have an opportunity it's low cost and it's low commitment, but it's a way for you to finally get off the fence and get in the game. So do you want me to tell you a little bit about the actual event, Grant?
Talk to me. Let me know.
So this event, it's a 2-day event. Okay, there's going to be about 6 hours on 2 days. So 6 hours one day, 6 hours another day. And ultimately, this event is designed to instill confidence. But it's not a rah-rah session. Like the feedback we've gotten is that it is so action-packed with value. Like we don't even barely take breaks, Grant. You need to bring your lunch and hang out and stay close to your computer. We take like 5-minute breaks, 10-minute breaks. It's a workshop. What do you do at a workshop? You work, right?
It's in the name.
You work. It's in the name, baby. So you gotta show up. Like this is not for people who want to just kick the tires again for 10 years and not like if you're ready to get booked and paid to speak and you're ready to get the clarity that you need and the confidence that you need and open up a clear path to get booked and paid to speak, this event might be for you. Okay, so check this out. On day one, I'm not going to go through the whole agenda, but on day one, you're going to have so much of a visceral experience of that you can actually do this. You can actually do this. There are, some people say there's soft skills and there's hard skills, and a lot of people say people pay for hard skills, and it's kind of true in some respects, right? But we need to package our soft skills inside of those hard skills. My wife calls it chocolate covered broccoli. Okay, chocolate covered broccoli. This is good stuff here. So what do people want, Grant? They want the chocolate, don't they? But what do they need? They need the broccoli. They need the broccoli. And the broccoli is what carries the nutrients. But you got to sell the chocolate, right? So we could talk about this all. I could do a seminar on just that one analogy. But ultimately, in this first session, this first day, it's all about you really getting the legs under your table, the emotional legs under your table that's going to be the inspiration to blast through. It's like the gasoline in your tank to keep you going when you hit those inevitable challenges. You want to have 1,000 legs under your table by the end of day one so that an elephant could stand on that table. Because emotion is energy in motion, right? So we need to have 1,000 legs under that table on day one and in our business so that when that elephant stands on it, it's not going to collapse, right? So day one is about preparing your mind, your body, your soul, and it's also giving you a lot of amazing content, but we take you through some very deep exercises that allow you to build those 1,000 legs under that stool. And what we've heard, the feedback we've gotten after day one, Grant, a couple bits of feedback. Literally, we've had people cry on day one, lots of people, like happy tears. Happy tears, come on now, happy tears. And those are good things because people have literally said to us on day one, Clinton, I finally believe that I can do this. I can finally see I just got the chills. Yeah. I can finally see a clear path. I feel validated. That imposter syndrome, again, it's never going to go away, but they start to chip away at that and they see on the other side, they say, oh my goodness, I can do this. The other bit of feedback we just got from somebody the other day, literally, it was about a month ago. He's a gentleman from Australia, because we have people from all around the world. As you all know, we've students, almost 17,000 students now in 53 countries around the world so far. So he says, after day one, he said, I got undercharged. He said, I would have paid over $1,000 for just day one. Wow. Just saying. So that's day one. Any questions about that before I go into day two?
Day one sounds beautiful.
Day one is a beautiful thing. There's flowers that fall from the sky. It's
magical.
Kidding. So it's all virtual. You can do this from the comfort of your own home. You can do this in your office, but you better show up and be ready to work. Seriously. Don't be showing up on your phone. Show up to work. Now, day two is taking what we learned in day one and you have homework too, by the way. You have homework. I know that might trigger some things for you, but if you want to be successful, you've got to do what others have done, and that is do the work, right? So we're going to give you some awesome things to do in the end of day one. It's going to really lead you into day two. In day two, we are going to focus on really taking what we've created, or what you've created in day one, and really start to put a roadmap in place, okay? Your abstract, again, the number one tool to land paid speaking gigs. This tool has literally, one of our students, Eric, you know quite well, he's been on the podcast several times. When he was a student of ours, he's been a student of ours for about 8 years now, and he's doing $600,000-$700,000. By the way, that does not happen year one or day one. That took him 7-8 years to get to. But in his first, I think it was 90 days after he started working with us, he did $36,000 in paid speaking gigs, Grant, with just his abstract.
Yeah.
No website, no demo video. So if all of y'all are out there saying, oh, I need my website before no. You need your abstract. You need to make it crystal clear what problem you solve and who you solve it for. And you need to have a system in place to be able to go out there and actually market this or shop this with event planners. And so day 2 is all about putting that plan in place so that you can start to bring this to the market.
Very cool. So just to kind of recap on a couple things there that you mentioned there. One is this is live. So this isn't like some, pre-recorded thing. This is it's a 2-day thing, 6 hours each day. Like you mentioned, that it's not come to just, sit and listen to, because 6 hours on Zoom is a long time, right? But it's very, very interactive. It's a lot of work. So get ready to come in and do the work here. This isn't a spectator thing. This is a participatory thing. But the other part is like we do these on a regular basis. And so whether you are listening to this particular episode, the day it comes out, or months and months into the future, we are doing these very, very regularly. So you can still sign up and join us for one of these. So if people want to find out more about them, find out when the next one is that they could attend, where can we find more information about this?
Great question, Grant. And I do want to sex it up just a little bit, because I know I made it sound like you're going to slog it out. And yes, it is going to be work, but it's going to be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah.
And you're going to be literally assigned a professional speaker. You're going to be assigned a professional speaker when you get registered. They're going to reach out to you. They're going to have a conversation with you. And then you're going to be working with 6- and 7-figure speakers. So just picture and imagine working with 6- and 7-figure speakers for 2 days. For 2 days. Do you think that would help you? Yeah. Do you think that would help you? Yes. So if folks want to find out about this event, they can go to thespeakerlab.com/Clinton, Clinton, thespeakerlab.com/Clinton, and they can find out about an upcoming event. And I will say that, a lot of people feel like, all right, that's great. I'm going to get my abstract at this event. So if you want to get your abstract, you definitely want to find the link on this page, wherever it is, and get yourself registered for the next one. And just know that once you have your abstract, that's just a piece of paper. That's not going to get you booked. You need to then know to take it to the market, right? A lot of people don't know this, but big businesses, they invest millions and millions of dollars in market research before they ever put out a single ad. Right, through focus groups and surveys, et cetera. And so you've got to do the work on the front end, right, to be able to get that abstract in place. We're going to show you how to do that in 2 days. All right? That's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of money. But then once you have that, it's not going to fall out of the sky and bop you on the head, right? You've got to take action. You've got to go out there and you've got to know how to reach out to people. You got to know who to reach out to. It could be trouble, right, if you don't know how to do that. So for those of you who join us, we've got about 100 spots. So if you want to be able to take that abstract and take it to the market, we've got a bonus that we're offering everybody, and that is to be able to watch a 90-minute training from a 7-figure speaker, where he's literally working with live students on that first 90 days. It's called 90-day sprint. So how do you actually take that to the market? What do you actually do? What are the most important things to focus on? How do you keep your mind right? So those of you who are really, really hungry, make sure to grab one of those 100 spots, get yourself registered, go to thespeakerlab.com/Clinton, and stop saying one day, it's going to happen, and let today be day one.
Beautiful. Very well said, Clinton. Again, it's the booked and paid boot camp. Make sure that you go register for the next one. Go to thespeakerlab.com/Clinton, thespeakerlab.com/Clinton to grab your ticket. And Clinton, we'll see you there, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.